Welcome to the Airgun Show. This week we've got more top tips from field target legend Nick Jenkinson. But before that, I'm looking at ways you can make the most of your woodland shooting permissions. I'm out on one of my woodland permissions today, and in all honesty, we've not timed it very well. It's approaching midday and it's quite hot, so I'm not expecting there to be a lot of quarry moving. However, time spent out on your permission is never time wasted. The reason we make relatively good bags when we're out filming is because we do our best to put ourselves in the right place at the right time. So what I'm going to aim to do today is wander around the woodland shoot and just show some of the hot spots where I would expect quarry to be moving if we had timed it right, and hopefully you can apply that to your shooting. Before we head into the woods, I'll just tell you a little bit about the equipment we're using today to save you from having to ask in the comments. Now, the gun is the Brocock Compato, and that's a legal limit air rifle in 177 caliber, and this one really likes Air Arms Diablo field pellets, so that's what I'll be using today. And it's just a nice lightweight compact air gun, and you've got that very smooth 10-shot magazine for fast follow-up shots should you need them. The scope is an MTC Genesis UL in 3 to 9 by 40. Now that will seem like a relatively small scope to some of you, but it just helps to keep this combo nice and light, makes it easy to carry around. And I've got that mounted on with sports match mounts just to keep it good and secure. Another quick point about the Genesis UL scope, it does have a very basic reticle compared with a lot of scope models out there these days. Now, I actually prefer that because it allows for quicker target acquisition and aiming off without having to do so many calculations in the heat of the action. So, that's a quick overview of the kit. Let's get into the woods. And I'm in no doubt as to where to head first when looking for pests on this shoot. We'll start off with one of my absolute favourite woodland shooting locations, the Pheasant Release Pen. Now, if you share your shooting permission with a pheasant shoot, you're already off to a real head start when it comes to pinpointing quarry. Now, the Release Pen is an absolute hotspot because there's always feed here in the shape of grain that's put out for the pheasants. Immediately you'll get corvids hanging around here, crows and magpies, and the best way to pick them off is usually to dig in and snipe them out from the city trees as they swoop in, and have a look out before they drop in to feed. Now, later in the year when natural food becomes leaner after the autumn, pests like squirrels also cotton onto the pheasant feeders, and you can have a lot of action with them. Another notorious Release Pen pest is the brown rat. Like the grey squirrel, it's a real enemy of the gamekeeper, partly because they munch their way through so much feed, but also because both of these rodents will predate on the eggs and young of game birds. Now, we've had some great sport shooting rats around release pens, and the trick is to just keep your eyes out for clues of their presence whenever you're in the woods. So if you see burrows or actually spot rats, you know it's well worth coming back later on, just as the light starts to fade, either with lamping kit or night vision gear, and maybe using bait to target them when they're out on the move. Now, here's a spot that's worth keeping a really close watch on. Now, this stack of logs has been put here because as it slowly decays, it creates habitat and food for insects, which provide natural feed for game birds and for songbirds too. But also, this log pile provides a nesting site for rats. Now, looking around, they don't seem to be resident at the moment, but later on, in the winter, when there's not much natural food around, and they home in on the feed in the release pen, I wouldn't be at all surprised if rats started nesting in here. Now I'd be looking for runs, burrows, any sort of fresh excavations. That would suggest to me that it's worth targeting those rats. And I may not necessarily target them right here because they're usually quite active, moving about a lot, very fidgety around the nest. What I would try to do is either work out which feeders they're targeting and try to pick them off there, or find the holes underneath the perimeter fence that runs around the release pen, put spots of bait there and pick them off as they stop to feed along those runs. Although the release pen and pheasant feeders can be a real magnet to pests, there are plenty of other places where you can encounter airgun quarry in the woods. This is the area of this wood that I would come to if I was planning to target roosting wood pigeons on a winter's evening. Now here we've got the remnants of an old softwood plantation. Now these evergreen trees offer plenty of dense cover long after the deciduous trees have dropped their leaves for the winter. Now that means it's offering shelter from the wind, the rain and the cold, and just a great place for wood pigeons to roost. The only problem is that dense cover makes it very difficult to thread a pellet through. So what I would often do is sit back on the outskirts and try and pick off pigeons as they flight into the treetops, either in the tops of these firs or in the deciduous trees before they drop down into this dense cover to roost. Now, there has been a stroke of luck here recently actually. A couple of trees have come down in the wind, and that's done two things. Firstly, it has opened the area up a little bit, giving me a wider arc of fire and a much better view and a better line to get shots up into these evergreens. But also, where one tree's come down, it has left what looks like the basis of what could be a very good natural hide if I just put a bit more work into it and build it up a little bit over the coming weeks. Right, now here's another tree species that's got real pulling power when it comes to airgun pests. We've got a stand of oaks here. Now the acorns are just starting to ripen. It's still a little bit early, but come September, October time, I would expect this tree and the trees around it to be absolutely buzzing with activity from squirrels, also jays and possibly pigeons too. And you don't just want to be looking up into the treetops when you're targeting an area like this, because grey squirrels and wood pigeons too will spend a lot of time on the ground foraging for fallen acorns. And squirrels will also be looking for places to store acorns, so they've got a stash put away for the winter months when times get tougher. We've got a woodland crop here that we should be able to exploit today. It's quite a large stand of beech trees, and the mast is just starting to ripen. I've had a look around on the ground. There's a lot of husks and a few kernels, which suggests something's been feeding on them. Now they will attract the same kind of species as acorns, so probably grey squirrels, jays too. So what I'm going to do is find somewhere to tuck myself in, and we'll see if we can't get one or two shots. Building a hide tends to create too much disruption for this sort of ambush, unless you're planning to go away and come back another time. So I'm just going to settle in against the base of a tree and hopefully get some action with squirrels feeding in the beeches. Once in position, it's just a case of keeping your eyes and ears peeled. It can pay to listen as well as look when you're targeting squirrels around a stand of beech trees, because when they're feeding up in the treetops on that mast, they'll take the kernels out and chuck away the husks, and you'll often hear the patter of husks as they fall down through the branches and onto the woodland floor. Now if you can locate where the sound's coming from, often you can actually watch the trail of falling debris, follow it up, and eventually pinpoint exactly where the squirrel is. So it's well worth listening out for that. You'll see that I've not put on my head net. It's a hot, muggy day, so I'm opting for comfort over concealment. Well, that squirrel wasn't actually in a beech tree, but you can bet that it was in this area because of the draw of that beech mast. Now, we're actually going to wrap up the filming now because we're running out of time. But what I'm going to do, I've heard some mast dropping in the trees behind me, so I'm going to go and pick up that squirrel and just give it a bit longer over there and see if I can't account for a few more. And I'm pleased to say that I managed to add another squirrel before I wrapped up that session. And now, it's the Airgun Show news.
This is the Airgun Show news. Brought to you by the Airgun Centre. Daystate has launched a new version of its acclaimed Griffin air rifle. It features a quick adjustable palm rest and hugged moderator. Priced at £1,500, it's available in 177 or 22 caliber and in 2 power options. The Griffin comes with a 10-shot magazine and magnetic single-shot loading tray. Jack Harris won the 2016 BFTA Grand Prix Series at the concluding round at Anston FTC Airgun Club in South Yorkshire. The Air Arms shooter put in a strong performance in all 7 rounds, achieving 4 100% scores for a total of 497.96. Air Arms also dominated League 1 of the team tables. England A team took the top spot, Air Arms Wales finished 3rd, and Air Arms England B team placed 6th. Thermal imaging is becoming more accessible, and the Seek Compact XR phone add-on from Scott Country makes it even easier to incorporate this technology into your airgun shooting. Available for iPhone or Android, the 259.95 unit plugs into your phone to create a thermal image that's great for spotting live quarry after dark and locating shot game. And finally, there's a chance to win a Kamita Orion BP Bullpup air rifle in the September edition of Airgun Shooter magazine. Out now! The issue is packed with hunting features including stalking rabbits, ambushing wood pigeons, and FAC power pest control, plus tips on creating your own natural hide and how to hang on to your shooting permission, and much, much more. That was the Airgun Show news.
I'd like to talk a little bit about trigger technique, but before we go into that, I just want to mention about adjusting triggers and what you can expect from a trigger unit. To do that, I'm going to make an adjustment on this trigger and show you that it's incorrectly adjusted and what you need to do to correct that. So first thing, I've got to make sure the rifle is safe. And now I'll show you where the problem lies with this particular trigger. So the rifle's safe. I'm now going to demonstrate the problem with the trigger. This has actually got a creep on the second stage. So I pull the first stage back, comes to a bump there, but then gradually as I increase the pressure, the trigger moves before the gun goes off. That's what's called trigger creep. I'll do that one more time. This is an excellent trigger unit on this rifle, but the problem with that creep is that I can't predict exactly when the shot's going to release. So I need to make an adjustment to it to remove that creep, and then we can look at trigger technique. If you've identified a problem with the trigger on your rifle, obviously every manufacturer produces different trigger units, and if you're not confident in making the adjustments yourself, you need to seek advice from an engineer or a gun shop. But for this rifle, I'm going to take the stock off and show you the adjustment that I need to make. Now this trigger mechanism's got 2 adjusting screws. I know from experience that the rear trigger screw on this mechanism needs to be turned anti-clockwise to remove the creep. And it's far easier seeing if there's creep on a trigger visually rather than just relying on the sensitivity of your finger. That suits my needs. I'm pleased with that. But what you need to make sure is that this is a warm day and I've got good sensitivity on my fingers at the moment, but you have to take into account that if you're going to shoot the rifle in cold weather, it might need a slightly heavier trigger pull, and you might feel more confident with more pressure on the trigger to release the shot. So I'm happy with that trigger adjustment, and now I'm going to get the action back in the stock and show you the trigger technique that I like to use. So this is the technique I like to use. I'm right-handed. I'm going to put those 3 fingers around the pistol grip. I don't hold on to it very hard. I put the pad of my trigger finger on the trigger blade, and the trigger release is an increase of pressure between my finger and thumb. And I believe that release is keeping the rifle in line with the direction you want the shot to go. So a gradual increase, and the rifle fires. I'll do that one more time. So pistol grip, but not too tight. Pad onto the trigger. An increase of pressure between my finger and thumb in a straight line with the barrel, and I think that improves people's follow through and generally increases the accuracy of a shot. So that's a little bit about adjusting the trigger and a little bit about my technique, my preferred technique of using that trigger. The proof of the pudding's in the eating, so let's have a go at some of these targets. I'm happy with that.
That's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you aren't already a member of the BASC, have a look at their website and check out the benefits you could be taking advantage of through Airgun membership.